I wanted to watch this one for a while now. Why Spotify will ultimately fail. Spotify isn't going anywhere if Pandora is still around. That's a good point, but I don't think Spotify makes a lot of money. But I'm really curious about this. All right, let's check this out. Why Spotify will ultimately fail.
Imagine for a moment that you have a job managing a bowling alley. It's one of the many alleys in your town. It's a chain. You have to work long hours to keep the business profitable and growing. You have to make the right decision with unforeseen circumstances such as COVID. You have to keep things interesting and new so your patrons don't get bored and so casual patrons have a reason to come back. You really like managing a bowling alley. You accepted this job 7 years ago, and in that—
Okay, that's an insane life. I really... I can't imagine that. This is a life, managing a bowling alley. I can't think of anything more or anything less I'd want to do with my life. I'm really just happy managing a bowling alley. Watching people just throw balls around, watching people grab balls, stick their fingers in them, you know what I'm saying? Buy shoes for me. 7 years of stinky shoes, smelly shoes. Okay, let's go.
At time,
I've been meaning to watch this for like a while now.
Has gone up by 40%. Food has gone up by 26%, yet your paycheck has gone down by more than half. Even though you're earning in the top 1% of bowling alley managers, you're still not making minimum wage. What would you do? I would hope that you would quit. The reason I'm using—
Okay, funny thing about this shirt here. Really funny thing about this shirt here. So we were doing a reaction stream kind of like this, but we're reacting to music videos a few weeks back, and this lady that was doing like a really bad music video, it's called, her name's like something, the song's called Chin Up High. Basically, she's wearing this shirt in it, and the funny thing is like Ben in the chat was like, oh, I really like that shirt. He's like, that shirt is sick. Here we are a few weeks later, and he's wearing that shirt. So I'd like to take responsibility for Ben wearing this shirt. You're welcome, everyone. It's my fault he's wearing this shirt right now. All right, his eyebrows f me up. I can't focus on what he's saying. Sometimes I make jokes about it, but like not like in a bad way. Someone was accusing him of being high or something. I was like, yeah, man, put down the pipe. That's how you burned your eyebrow. Anyways, let's go.
This particular metaphor is because I went bowling the other day at a bowling alley near my house, and it was filled with signs apologizing for the staff shortage and offering up to $19 per hour plus benefits to work the front desk. In reality, this bowling alley management position I put you in starts with a salary of around $70,000 plus benefits. In reality, but neither musicians nor venture capitalists live anywhere close to reality. In today's video, we're not going to be talking about Joe Rogan getting $100 million or how streaming services are degrading the way we listen to and explore music. For years, for an exhaustive amount of time now, I've been collecting data from hundreds of independent musicians and small record labels, and I finally feel certain enough to tell you exactly how Spotify is, how do I put this? A grift, a heist. Let's start this with some recent personal numbers that—
Okay, I'm really curious about this because Spotify gives you a 70-30 cut on the streams. Unless they are lying about that. Like the musicians get 70% of every stream and Spotify keeps 30. So they're really not making that much. So like I'm curious how it's a grift unless they're lying about that number.
will probably—
You ordered that shirt right away, had to be—
surprise you even if you thought that streaming services were a bad thing. 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, I released a full-length album as the Flashbulb. It had a promotional budget, it had a music video, and it was actually pretty well received. At the time of me recording this in January of 2023, this is how much money I made from that album on Spotify since releasing it. Now, a few weeks ago in December, I released a new album exclusively on Bandcamp. There was no promotion, no music video. In fact, I didn't even mention it on social media until about 48 hours before it came out. I priced it at $5, and the first week, it made this much. My point here is that in only 7 days, I was able to make more from this half-assed album release than Spotify could pay me in 3 fucking years. All right, so let's get rid of this new one and compare the exact same album. Our Simulacra made 3 times more on Bandcamp than it did on Spotify since its release.
So the difference for me for Spotify and Bandcamp is I feel like it's like impossible to actually grow on Bandcamp. The algorithm doesn't really work very well on it. It's more so for people that already have an existing fan base and want to sell their music. Like I feel like it's really hard for people to find your music that way. So that's the one good thing about Spotify. Like there's actual discoverability. I'm not here to defend Spotify, by the way. Yeah, of course, direct sales is going to make more from Spotify.
I looked at the data and I noticed that the amount of money streaming services paid artists was sinking by a whole lot, and I wondered to myself if they had pulled a massive bait and switch scheme with royalties. And it wasn't until I got my hands on this, the entire contract agreement between Sony Music and Spotify, that I realized that it absolutely was a bait and switch, and major labels were completely aware of it. So much so that Sony Music got paid with huge non-refundable advances from Spotify, and in every case I looked into, none of those advances went to the artists. The initial contract with Sony in 2011 paid $25 million to Sony per year, plus $9 million in ad spots, which Sony could then resell. Sony's advances were tied to market share and other variables on an annual basis, so they would keep rising year after year. Spotify knew that if they wanted you to become—
Wait, this is pretty complex. I'm getting overwhelmed here right now. You're starting to pivot towards a money train defending Spotify. I'm not really defending Spotify, but if we're going to criticize something, I want to make sure like we're accurate, you know? If we're going to get after Spotify, I want to make sure we're like getting after them for the right thing.
A Spotify customer and subscriber.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Bandcamp is just a good place to send people.
First, they needed to have the biggest names in music in their library right from the start. And to do this, they threw millions of venture capital dollars at the media.
I was a little confused about what he just said here. It kind of like overwhelmed me pretty quickly there. So the major labels, did Spotify give them in advance, or like what happened there? Can someone—
conglomerates that own the license.
I'm already kind of confused here. I kind of want to go back.
Sony Music got paid with huge non-refundable advances from Spotify, and
Okay. So Spotify paid them huge advances.
in every case I looked into, none of those advances went to the artists. The initial contract with Sony in 2011 paid $25 million to Sony per year, plus $9 million.
So maybe that's what they mean when they say that artists on Spotify get 70%, they keep 30%. They're talking about after all of this.
Dollars in ad spots, which Sony could then resell. Sony's advances were tied to market share and other variables on an annual basis, so they would keep rising year after year. Spotify knew that if they wanted you to become a Spotify customer and subscriber, first, they needed to have the biggest names in music in their library right from the start. And to do this, they threw millions of venture capital dollars at the media conglomerates that
just went to the labels, not to the artists, to keep their music on the service. Spotify paid the labels a bunch of money.
Own the licenses for the music on an annual basis, rather than just promising a fair royalty. So if you're an independent musician, and if you ever wondered if Beyonce's label is getting more per stream than you are, the answer is such a complicated form of course, that you're better off just drinking whiskey until you fall asleep laughing maniacally at how unfair the world is. So why would musicians sign up in the first place? Well, I think there are a lot of reasons. To start, most musicians want to adapt to the next big thing, and music streaming effectively made accessing music so easy that music piracy started dropping, not unlike the effect Netflix had on movie piracy. But musicians couldn't—
That's a really good point.
—just upload their music to Spotify. Spotify and iTunes couldn't be bothered to actually manage their own library that justifies their existence in the first place. They made independent musicians pay for the privilege for third-party services like TuneCore or DistroKid. A little side note here, Spotify would actually buy a minority stake in DistroKid so they could monetize their own lack of functionality. After a few years, if you wanted to be an—
I didn't know that—
independent musician and have your name alongside the bigger artists that Spotify was actually secretly paying up front for, you didn't have any other option. And for someone like myself who came into Spotify having already been making a living as a professional musician, once the payments started coming in, it started making sense. I won't bore you with the details, I already did that in this video, but
I haven't seen that other video. I don't think, at least.
once Spotify and the other streaming services dominated every other form of music distribution, including radio, take a wild guess what happened. Musicians got f***ed. Here's a way of putting it that tech investors might understand. This is how much Spotify paid independent musicians per stream on average over time.
Yo, what? Interesting. Wow. Okay.
Without a doubt,
that's no good. That is no good.
It is a bait and switch, especially when Spotify's subscriber growth looks like this. Now, when I pointed this out in a video 2 years ago, I got quite a bit of pushback from investors or day traders who I assume had some sort of stake in Spotify, and I couldn't fathom how they weren't seeing this as a bad thing. It's actively squeezing the life out of the one thing that you're reselling. If Uber drivers were paid so low that they couldn't afford fuel, that would not be good news for investors. I think a lot of people in the music industry have been completely blindsided by this because the modern Silicon Valley business model operates so differently. Most people would describe Spotify's business strategy as something called blitz scaling, and it's both clever and stupid at the
lightning fast path to building massively valuable companies.
Same time. The goal is to grow at an absurdly rapid pace and get as high of a market valuation as quickly as possible. And then, after you've succeeded at that, then you find out if the business can be profitable and how to make that work. Seriously.
Well, yeah, Spotify was actually like started illegally, if I remember correctly. It was something like they uploaded a lot of like stolen music, and then they had to like make a deal with major labels basically in order to like keep it going. I saw that in another video. Spotify CEO also loves war AI. Hey, what a coincidence. Oh, I heard about that. A lot of tech companies do this. Pay attention to this part, peeps.
Businesses founded on blitz scaling or fast scaling, the top priority
What is happening?
of all other things is to keep growing. And in cases such as MoviePass or Uber, the customer gets a slight lifestyle upgrade paid for by a pool of venture capital investments. Now, in Spotify's case, the venture capital allowed the initial membership fees to be low and the royalties to be relatively high. That way, more artists would get on board and keep their music there. But since Spotify wouldn't dare risk slower growth of subscribers, their immense losses are bandaged and subsidized from independent musicians, both by cutting their royalties and charging them for listing prioritization on things like the Marquee program. Unfortunately, due to Spotify's market share and absolute dominance and presence on everybody's phones, as a result, the perceived value of music in general has dropped to unsustainable levels. And an extremely optimistic take would be saying that the music economy is at critical mass and not utterly irreparable. One might ask, is Spotify's business model functional without a profit? And the answer to that depends on who you ask and what you mean by functional. Do you remember earlier in this video when I told you about the major labels having backdoor agreements with Spotify? Well, a lot of that was huge amounts of stocks in Spotify being transferred to the record labels, and almost all the labels dumped that stock right after it went public. The CEO is worth $5 billion.
Dude, his head, that's crazy. His head is crazy. I don't want to say anything else. I'm just gonna leave it there. I don't want to get marked for bullying.
So employees like Dawn Ostroff get about
He was head of his class. I like that.
$7.5 million in salary. Third-party companies like DistroKid that
Off to the bowling alley to put that head in the Shino Ballo.
exist solely to charge you to put your
WB, that's why you shaved your head? Yeah, just to look like Dan. Is his name Daniel Ek? Yeah, to look like Daniel Ek.
music on Spotify have a $1 billion valuation, and Spotify's investors have made, well, about that. But the much bigger issue with the streaming platform business model that investors seem to be wildly ignoring is that none of these platforms own any of the assets that they're reselling. They don't even have a license for them for the next fiscal year. Let's say that there was some sort of, I don't know, a viral Reddit post that created some sort of pseudo-online musician union, or what?
Yeah, dude, what if everyone removed their music from Spotify at once? They would be so like, the only thing that'd be left would be a major label stuff.
Let's just say that Joe Rogan said something else completely insane that was the straw that broke the camel's back. If there was just some sort of small movement or occurrence where a few thousand independent artists with fan bases similar to mine decided to remove their music from Spotify today, it very well could create a snowball effect with subscribers. And of course, as a customer, if you put your AirPods in and picked up your phone expecting to hear some artists that you're accustomed to listen to and all of a sudden weren't able to find them, you're not going to recite your loyalty to Spotify. You'll just use a platform that has the artists you listen to. The point is, this platform is extremely fragile and it is increasingly neglecting the only asset that it has.
He's got some really good points here. I wasn't sure if I was going to be completely on board with this, just because like most of the arguments I see made towards Spotify, they're just kind of shaky at best. But this is pretty damning.
If you're an investor who has a stake in Spotify or music streaming platform and you think that there's a chance that they will stabilize and eventually make a profit or a steady long-term profit, I can tell you after spending years excruciatingly analyzing both the artist and business side of this microeconomy, I am as certain as I could possibly be that you are wrong. For me at least, I don't think that folding my arms and saying anyone that subscribes to Spotify is part of the problem is helpful. I think that making videos like this and being a broken record every time somebody asks me about these things is helpful. But the truth is that if everybody stopped using streaming services right now, they'd have what? Bandcamp, iTunes, piracy. None of these are adequate replacements. So
We should all just return to iPods. I think that's what we need to do. Return to tradition. Return to iPod. I mean, but assuming artists will suddenly go and remove their music because of low pay could be a stretch. There's a lot of smaller artists who just want access to all Spotify customers. Well, think about it. If it was like a picketing sort of thing, then everyone, like, you know, there was a strike, there was an artist strike on Spotify, there could be people that go across the picket line and just go rack up millions of monthly listeners. You know what I mean? Like, so there's no guarantee that people won't just like over all the artists that took off all their stuff. So there's like, I don't know if it is that fragile. Like, it is fragile in the sense that that could happen, but I think what I just said could also happen.
if you're an Apple Music customer, or if you thought that switching to Apple Music was a solution, nope. They've been doing the exact same thing. Independent artists are making an average of 32% 50% less per stream than when most of them put their music on the platform. In fact, Apple Music launched with a pseudo-internal blitz scaling method. They tried to bring in a bunch of subscribers with a 3-month free trial with no intention of paying artists during that period. They were subsidizing growth through royalties because they otherwise would have had to spend their own money. Tidal though, right? It was built by artists to be fair to artists. Wrong. For me, personally, Tidal, when they've actually paid out, is now paying 51% less per stream than when I signed on. All right, let's get to the center here. This is important. The streaming business model simply does not work. Any future platform of this type will need a similar strategy in order to gain a sizable market share that could promise.
I mean, it's all going to collapse in on itself, and some new exploitative grift will reconstitute in its place. Neil Young and some other artists tried, but that failed. I remember that. Taylor Swift tried, and a few others. They always come back. Exposure is a hell of a drug, especially since you can use Spotify to cross-promote your TikTok, YouTube, etc. Yeah, Napster and iPods. Oh man, that's really returning to tradition. We can go back on LimeWire, get some viruses. Mom's gonna be so pissed when we ruin the family computer.
These are for-profit companies. It is their legal duty to their investors to eventually pay as little as they can possibly get away with while charging as much as they can. It's still completely botched. Capitalism only works when there's scarcity. We have concocted insane, unconstitutional laws that make you a criminal for humming a song in public or transferring a file to try and force it to work without scarcity.
Dude, imagine if it was like that. I mean, it is bad, but imagine if it was that bad to where, like, if you hummed, like, I don't know, a Taylor Swift song out in public, the police are like, all right, let's go, buddy. We got another one of them today. Will you believe that, Jim? We got another one.
Scarcity. Capitalism, above all things, requires growth, and the function of intellectual property is the opposite to growth.
Yeah, I'm sure what he was talking about was like, I don't know, maybe like on YouTube or something, how you like can infringe copyright by humming a song or something. I'm guessing that's what he meant. SoulSeek still going strong. All I'm gonna say, I may or may not still use SoulSeek, just from time to time.
It's about monetizing intangible things and then trying to profit by limiting who has access to them. The only way that this makes money is when you sidestep it by selling convenience, novelty, or if you're simply making people too scared of punishment from their government to share information with one another. The sooner that artists, intellectual property holders, and investors can accept and digest this, then the sooner we can build a music industry that doesn't collapse every single decade. If you're a musician or any type of artist that tries to make a living off of their work, this all probably sounds like really bad news, but it's not. A post-scarcity society is considered utopian. In 1999, something really important happened. A group of college students made an incredibly easy way to share music files that didn't require a web host. I think everybody in the tech and business world saw the potential that...
Dude, I remember using Napster, man. That shit was sick. I remember okay, so I was a child. I think I was in middle school maybe, and I was downloading Snoop Dogg's Gin and Juice. I shouldn't actually be. I may or may not have been downloading Snoop Dogg's Gin and Juice off of Napster. That's all I'm saying. And along with a variety of other rap songs. I may or may not have done that. Cops are playing songs when people film them, so the videos get hit by copyright.
An MP3 file has, and then companies like Apple regurgitated it into crap like iTunes. But in this colossal change of the music industry...
The thing I hate about Spotify and copyright is it's basically people calling dibs. I found a Spotify artist who had hundreds of uploads of basic splice hooks with basic drums just so they can get in the copyright system first. 20-minute basic songs. That's crazy, dude. Like getting a splice loop the second it comes out and making a song immediately just so you can upload it and get the copyright on it and possibly claim everyone else's music. I think we just found a new scheme, man. You should name it something ironic too, like it's mine now, or like this is mine now. Like the artist name should be like this is mine now. Creative Commons is a nice alternative to copyright. Yeah, when Audius first launched, people were uploading other artists' stuff and claiming. I remember that.
Centralization. It turns out that we don't need Apple.
I remember they thought Audius was going to be the next big thing. The problem with it is there's no ways to get ads on it.
Expose the reality of intellectual property that I had just mentioned. It turns out that we also don't need Twitter Incorporated or Meta or Facebook or Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or even YouTube. All of these things can be done without a private data center, CEOs, or even copyright. And as long as we have a free market, it eventually will be. And surprisingly, recently nonprofits are actually accelerating this. Things like Signal and Mastodon are great examples of nonprofit projects that function far more efficiently than what they're trying to replace because there isn't a profitable business to manage. And no, the mention of decentralization here has nothing to do with cryptocurrencies or NFTs, nor should it.
Man.
The whole idea here is to build an economy that supports individuals, that create things that you enjoy, not concoct more ways to profit off of artificial scarcity. So, what should we do in the meantime? I think that if you are a subscriber to a streaming service, now might be a good time to cancel that subscription and enjoy the novelty of finding a music file player that you enjoy and doing some exploring to find some new music that you.
I mean, on one hand, I think that's a good idea. I don't know. I gotta think about this more. Like, that is kind of a good idea. Like, the more people that like get rid of Spotify, the better. And you could be the change you want to see in the world. Gotta go back to cassette tapes. He has an open short position on Spotify, by the way.
Without an algorithm supplying it for you. By the way, I don't think Bandcamp will solve these problems. I don't think Epic Games bought them because they love music so much. I think they'll eventually find a way to squeeze as much profit as possible out of it. But in the meantime,
imagine like in a week, Bandcamp announces that they're now doing like the Spotify model. You can now add things to playlists. You can also stream things and pay, and artists will get paid per stream, or you could buy it. But also, we're going to focus more on the streaming thing.
As for musicians, encourage your fans to support you elsewhere. Let them know that helps you create more material that they enjoy.
I kind of want to make a video like this about SoundCloud.
Releasing music on streaming service.
I have made like a SoundCloud exposed video before, but it wasn't like about this in particular. It was more so about, I can't remember, it was like 5 years ago now.
This is a few months or weeks after you release them on Bandcamp or your own platform. Just this last week, I tried uploading a slightly limited version of my newest album to Spotify, and surprisingly, it got someone's attention and wasn't very well received. I can't really speak publicly about that conflict at the moment, but to me, it's good news to not be completely ignored, even if the only attention Daddy is giving me is when I misbehave. More, if not most importantly,
what does that mean? What does that mean?
We're musicians because we love making music. It's as simple as that.
SoundCloud's just like a ship that's like slowly sinking in the slowest way possible.
There's nothing further from the purity and beauty of making music than the dumpster fire of a tech company blitzscaling. When the music streaming model collapses, and it will, we'll still have this gift. And hey, speaking of supporting artists, I have a Patreon and it's connected to a Discord community. We do monthly songwriting challenges, we play games, we talk about things like decentralized music streaming. For the last year, they've been hearing me complain about the struggles of starting a 501c3 to do this very thing, but also there's loads of audio assets and over 34 hours of unreleased music. It's awesome, and
That's
you can
a lot.
join us for as little as $1. I'm out, keep creating, bye.
I agree, though, that Bandcamp and buying direct from artists is the best way to go about supporting artists. I'm definitely worried about Epic's buyout. Well, how long ago was that? You guys know? I haven't really been following that. That was a really interesting video. I feel like I did learn a lot more than I expected to. He did some deep research. I didn't know about a lot of these things. I mean, I knew that like they had like deals with major record labels, but I didn't know that they gave them advances and that we would make less money because of it. Like, this is that's kind of concerning. Do you think it's going to keep going down? Well, I remember when one platform dies, another rises, so don't lose hope. Okay, this seems like around the time they started doing the Bandcamp Friday thing, right? I swear Ben goes hard as on his research. I know, dude. Like me and him would make a really good team. Ben do the research and I'll do the comedy, okay? Ben and Venus Theory should be teaching in college, but not me. Not me. Yeah. That was a really good video. I like that. All right, see you guys in the next video. Should be tomorrow. Peace.
Band Incorporated.